Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. SubhanAllah, in this video we're going to go into an important topic, a topic that is, basically relevant to every Muslim today and in the past, a topic which sits at the heart of the Islamic debates, of the Islamic hearts and minds among the scholars and among the laymen. And it is the topic of Aqeedah and more specifically the comparison between Ashari and Athari / Salafi Aqeedah, and why, in the end, of course, conclusion, why I have chosen Athari / Salafi Aqeedah, why I believe it's the correct path for every Muslim, and the reasons behind that. So with that, let's go straight into this video. Amma ba'd, bismillah. So first of all, this topic has to be understood in its context. And in that, I mean the reasons why we have these two big groups among the Muslims, these two understandings. So you need to understand that the way Islam progressed was through particularly two main movements. And I'm just quoting, the major understanding in the history and what we can see and observe that happened. And we observe that there were two groups who had two different understandings, one of whom called themselves Ahlul-Hadith, and one of which called themselves Ahlul-Ray. These two words, are Arabic words, people of Hadith and people of the intellect. And so these two groups geographically were split in as well location-wise. Ahlul Hadith primarily in the Arabian Peninsula, more isolated, the Sahaba, the Arabs, the early Muslims, who took great care and attention to Hadith. And then Ahlul Ray in people of usually Baghdad, Persia, and outside of the Arabian Peninsula, who were more driven to the intellectual, not intellectual, but the reasoning and intellectual aspects of the deen, but also had weaker connection to hadith, right? Because hadith come from chains by the parents or by the teacher, chain by chain. And so the more you spread out, of course, the less people and scholars will have connection to hadith. So this is how Islam essentially progressed into these two groups. Right. So now you know the background and you can study these things yourself. But let's begin into the specifics. Ashari Islam, which is popular today to some degree, was founded by Abu al-Hassan al-Ashari, who was living around the 3rd century after Hijrah. We need to understand who he was in his context. He was a scholar. He was born among and lived among the Mu'tazila, who were, heretics in the deen, major reasoning intellectuals who took aql and reason in the center of their understanding and took their logic above everything else, right? Not submit to Islam, not accept things unless it makes sense to them, which is principally fallacy and incorrect and not good in Islam to do. So he was born among the Mu'tazila. I think his father was a Mu'tazili, and for 40 years he remained among them until he became had issues with them in their understanding and realized that this is incorrect, the Orthodox Islam is true. So he attempted to go to a middle ground and discuss and refute them while defending Orthodox Islam. So he was very much affected by the Mu'tazila, which everyone by ijma' understand and accept were heretics. So essentially that was that area. It was the Abbasid period. Later in Islam, there was other intellectual traditions that came and affected the people and their understanding of the deen and their thoughts, like the Greek philosophy, Hellenistic traditions, Kalam traditions, and Neoplatonic metaphysics. And what that means is like the metaphysics of the understanding of God and the world, where you really focus on making God the most immaterial, non like totally independent being, in a way where you say he has nothing, no time, no space, no matter, no face, no nothing, like he's just totally outside. This is like the Neoplatonic understanding. You accept there is some cause to this, but you have an understanding of God that's taken into from the Greek, from these philosophical ideas. You don't base it on the Quran and the Sunnah. So this is something that was there. Now, in the third century, again, these ideas started to influence the people a lot. So we need to understand, we're going to talk about the contemporary time, but you need to understand the past, you need to understand how it progressed, so you can see the truth. Yani. So these things affected the people of the time. The Muslim world was not isolated. It had Christians, it had Jews, it had a lot of different groups of people and ideas, and Arabic became lingua franca. People translated works, shared the knowledge, and this affected everyone with new thoughts and ideas. Even the government, the Abbasids, at some period of time, had the mihna, where they forced their own theological understanding from the Mu'tazila. For example, that the Quran is created on the people, like they forced on Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, and even punished him publicly for going against that doctrine. And many scholars, in the end, began to try to defend Islam from these ideas, with the same ideas and reasoning, with philosophy, diverting away from the way the prophets and the Salaf used to talk and convey and communicate, and the words they used and what they did, instead trying their best to actually show Islam is true with incorrect methods. This is naturally the consequence of Muslims interacting with non-Muslims and being confronted with arguments that challenge their faith. If they don't understand the proper way to deal with things, and they really, really want to show Islam is true, they're going to show it's true in not the correct manner, or even say things which actually not true, just to please themselves, to please their counterpart, and to win the argument. And so this is something that definitely happened, and we see it happen today. And they fall into the trap of introducing new thoughts and reasonings and framework in the deen, even trying to make the deen compatible with their thoughts, with these frameworks that seem to make total sense logically. So now you want to include Islam to that logic, so that you find a logical framework that makes sense, and you introduce this in as a new way. And this is what happened. This is the basics, right? And we're going to go through this step by step. I'm giving you like this sort of introduction here. This is a very complex topic. It's really not for, the layman, but if you're a person who really have struggled in this understanding of Ashari and Salafi or Athari Aqeedah or Hanbali and madhabs, and, you're involved in this debate, I think, as you watch more of this video, it's going to be, beneficial for you. I will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, as we progress into this video and as I keep talking, that He make this video beneficial. And I seek refuge from making mistakes, and I seek guidance from Allah. And everything I say that's a mistake from shaitan, everything I say that is truth from Allah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all. So the people started mixing revelation, Greek thoughts, and ideas. And this is essentially what happened. A sort of a big reliance on logic, because you try to understand the deen based on your mind, right? And you try to, but you don't know where the limit is to where you can apply logic, right? And this is one of the biggest mistakes, because the scholars of Islam, even among the Ashari and among the people, started implementing ta'wil, figurative interpretation, to the different, for example, attributes of God, due to the fact that it made more sense to them. There was more logic for them based on the principles that we've mentioned. That, for example, God does not have a hand, for example. And we're going to go into this, right? And this is where they made a critical mistake. Now, of course, just because I mentioned this, Allah has a hand, but nothing, no, but laysa kamithlihi shay, there is nothing like Him, and this hand is not like our hands, right? We affirm, but we don't ask how. Now we will go into this. Okay, Bismillah. So again, we mentioned Imam al-Ashari, but we also should mention that while he was an Ashari scholar that tried to defend Islam against the philosophers and the heretics, he had, issues in his own Aqeedah, and he introduced new things, right? But he wrote a book called Al-Ibana, which, most likely is his book, even though people refute it and say it's not. And in this book, you can really see him affirming the path of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Salafi path, the path of affirming attributes without distortion, of Quran being uncreated, and so much more. If you read it, you will see that he very much concluded and changed his path in the end, seeking tawbah to God, and taking himself away from what he did before. You can really see a change. So he, before his end of his life, really changed his stance, and Allah knows best. And this is something that happened while his work, his teachings continued and evolved on, and the people accepted the earlier works of his and thoughts and didn't accept his conclusions, right? And that's how Ashari was born and continued and evolved, basically. So let's see here. One of the things that the Mu'tazila did was that they denied Allah's attributes, all of the attributes. Why? Because attributes like, for example, face or hand didn't suit their intellectual understanding of what a God should be. And also things like, Allah descends from his throne, or things like this, for them meant that God is dependent by time, space, and matter. They implemented this logical framework related to its dunya, and basically denied clear-cut hadith and denied the most common understanding. Now, maybe you are still unsure about these things, but keep on. We're going to explain you why this is true. They prioritized their mind over revelation. They forced people to say that the Quran was created, and more and more and more. And so we need to, now we have sort of gone into the Mu'tazila and the Ashari people, and Imam al-Ashari. And now I want to also, divert the topic a bit to understand something that's important. Because in Islam, we are very much warned about different things by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, warned about the errors of the past people. And we are warned about the Jews, what they did. And it's very important to understand what they did, because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that we will fall on the same problems as the Jews, which means that we should be aware of what those problems were so we don't fall into them. And so when we pray, we say, maghdubi alayhim waladdalin. And we know that maghdubi alayhim means the Jews, those who earned Allah's anger. And there are many reasons for that, which the scholars. But essentially, we can see a few themes repeating among the Jews and the mistakes they did, and the hadith we have. One of the things that they did is that they knew the truth, but they distorted it. That's why they earned Allah's anger. And they had knowledge, they had the Torah, the books was among them, but they didn't follow it correctly. They followed something for sure, but they didn't follow it correctly, right? And among other stories we find in Surah Al-Kahf is that the Jews went into excessive questioning about things that was not for their benefit, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this deen easy, but they made it hard. And that also is something that earned Allah's anger. So because this Surah Al-Kahf about the cow, this is an example of excessive questioning, and they tortured Musa alayhi salam with this. And they introduced innovations into religion because of this. They introduced things later that was not from the deen, and their own understanding and their own misinterpretations. And in addition to all of that, even historically, we find that they had the same issues that we have today, because they got the same issues where in history, when the Holy Land was occupied by the Seleucid Roman Greek Empire, the Hellenistic influence grew very strong. Hellenistic Roman influence, Greek philosophy, and it affected the Jews. We know this by history, that the people of the Bani Israel was split into two groups. One was the major Orthodox, who preserved the tradition and literalist interpretation, and the other was the Jews, which became Hellenized, which became adopting of these ideas, which licked the boots of these Roman Seleucid Greek emperors and colonists in their land, and essentially led to the historical Maccabi Wars, which is kind of interesting for a Muslim to learn about, even though probably no one has ever talked about it in the Deen because it's totally outside. It's just pure history. It was wars where, Bani Israel, this is before Isa, Bani Israel went to jihad against the colonists, the pagans, to defend their Tawheed deen. Wallahu alam. But the thing is that the Hellenistic dominance was not only there, it was all over the world. Language, their understand that their ideologies, and it affected the Jews. So this is what we have concluded on. It affected them. There was civil war, and essentially they went through the same things as we went through, and yeah, and essentially we could understand that this is something that past people have struggled with and it's not new. So let's be taken on a bit step back here. Why am I talking about Hellenism and Judaism and this? Because essentially, Ashari Islam and understanding has a taint of this. It is a result of the people who interacted with the Greeks' ideas, the philosophy, and subjected their understanding to some of the principles there, even if they don't like to admit it. The reasons they don't accept the Salafi Aqeedah, which we will explain what is soon, is because they have the understanding of God that they have outside of the tradition, and that they have based on their own aql, based on the logical principles that they can't, go around because of the Allahu Alam disease in their hearts, and all knows best the reasons. So, this happened before to later Ummah or later, earlier peoples, and it happens again. And, the Jews had the knowledge, they had the means, but they also, based on worldly influence and the desires, became corrupted and corrupted the deen and the understanding. And so, whenever revelation is forced to fit foreign philosophical frameworks, deviation becomes inevitable, whether in Judaism or Islam. So, okay, now we have understand this. Let's see if this topic will come back to us. But now let's talk about one more thing. How should Islam evolve? Should Islam evolve at all? Let's go into this because it's just like a quick commentary here. Fiqh evolves. Why? Because in fiqh in your life there are new things which happens. Things like, iPhone comes in, or things like a new matter in the farm, and in the end of the day there's new context, new societal issues, and things where the ummah, the scholars, the ulama need to address these new issues and do more new fatwas and new rules to apply to these new things and tools and everything that comes into play. So fiqh evolves. The principles stay the same, Quran and Sunnah, but fiqh evolves, right? Now, Aqidah does not evolve. Abadan, ever. Aqidah stays the same. Aqidah is just the truth, no matter you like it or not. What Rasulullah conveyed, not changing until Yawm al-Qiyamah, right? And so it's revelation, it's from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and no philosophical additions or reinterpretations are permitted, right? So what is the true Aqidah then? And what is even Ashari Aqeedah? Like, okay, we made a big understanding, but Ashari Aqeedah essentially says that God, yeah, so wait, before we go there, we're going to tell you these things here. Ashari Aqeedah basically says that, it denies the interpretation and understanding of the scholars and of the hadith. So when there is a hadith which says, for example, Allah rose above the throne, He rose above the throne, or He is on the throne, we will take that by the clear-cut understanding of the words. Rasulullah said, Allah al-Arsh, or istawa al-Arsh. That means what it means. We are not allowed to say that this does not mean that it is a metaphor. That is what Ashara do. And why do they do this? Because they don't like to accept that Allah can rise, that He can be on top of something, because their understanding of God does not permit it, because they have it from outside, right? The core principles is that in the Athari, Salafi Aqeedah, is that we affirm attributes of Allah and names of Allah as they came, without tahrif, no distortion, without ta'til, no negation, we don't negate, we don't say no, tasbih and takyif, we don't ask how, because asking how is where you fall into the problem and the bid'ah and the that's what's not allowed. You should understand that you are a limited human being. Your mind is limited. You are just a human being. It's not even possible, wallahu alam, that you can understand the nature of God, right? So asking how might not even be possible for our minds, right? So we don't ask how, we accept revelation. And that doesn't mean that there is no reason and sabab. On most of the things in Islam, we have the reasons and we have the sabab. But on Allah's nature, we don't ask how, because this is things which at the end of the day, we are not able to understand as limited human beings. And in addition, when we ask how, we have to look at it from our framework of living in the world with our principles around us. But that's not right to apply to Allah, right? That's why we don't ask how. Billah kayf. This is the most important principle you need to understand. So when you read hadith, when you read things about Allah, when you read things and you don't understand it, you say, I accept, I don't ask how, Allah revealed it, khalas. And this is the principle of Athari / Salafi Aqeedah, and it is the truth, and I will show you how it is the truth right now. Right here and now. Yeah, so Imam Malik rahimahullah, one of the biggest scholars in Islam, the father of Maliki madhab, he said, and we need to just make sure that this is correct. If anything's incorrect, correct me in the comments. Imam Malik said, the istiwa is known, the rising on the throne, it's known. The how is unknown. Believing in it is obligatory, and asking about it is an innovation. Imam Malik said, and this is everyone knows that Imam Malik said this. So basically, he already answered this question for us, because he affirms istiwa, that Allah rose above the throne. He said the how is not known, and there is nothing not known about it. We don't ask about it. Believing in it is obligatory. You believe in it, you accept it. And asking about how did it happen? How is it possible? How can he raise? How can he be? How can he do blah? It's a bid'ah to ask about these things, and you shouldn't ask about these things. So this is from Imam Malik. Imam Malik, Malikiya. Listen to this, right? The next, Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, said, I believe in Allah and what came from Allah upon the intended meaning of Allah. Or Allahu Alam, if he said this. Let's continue. Yes, so Imam Ahmad said, whoever says Allah has no knowledge, no hearing, no seeing, he is a Jahmi, and the Jahmi are destroyers. Jahmi was another sect, and they didn't even affirm things like Allah can hear, Allah can see, right? Because of this understanding of Allah that they have that is not from our deen, right? And then also Imam al-Bukhari said, whoever says, he said the Quran is the speech of Allah, uncreated. Whoever says it is created has committed kufr. He said that it's even kufr to believe that the Quran is created. And why do people say Quran is created? Because they don't accept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed the Quran and that it was with Allah forever. And they have these principles and these mistakes. And there is so many more statements of the scholars about these things. And when you go back, you return, you go back to see, you will understand that the understanding and the later understandings came not from the deen, right? So there is many more quotes and more points. These are some of the most important ones. And now we're going to summarize a bit to understand more what the Athari and Salafi Aqeedah is in the principles. The Salaf, the generations after the Prophet, peace be upon him, we don't have any hadith where they asked Rasulullah or the scholars among them how, right? They didn't ask how. And if they didn't ask how, then we should be like them. We should accept it as it is, just like they accepted it as it is. We follow the Prophet, the Sahaba, and the early generations because they are the best people, and Rasulullah told us this in the hadith. And we do that in every matter, no matter if it suits our intellect. The real Islam does not require any philosophical reconstruction trying to fit it to anyone else. It has its own Aqeedah, its own principles, and they are fully sound. There is no inconsistencies. And just like we believe in things, like we believe in angels and we believe in jinn that we don't see, that we can't prove, the same is with these attributes, that we believe it as it came. We believe in these things, jinns and angels, because it came to us. We don't ask, how is it possible that there can be an angel? No, this is how it is. Yeah, right. So this is a principle, and it's almostly in general in the deen. And we see that the Ash'ari and the Maturidi scholars basically have some of the same flaws that the Jews had, because they suited the deen to their own liking, desires, or whatever it may be. And some people are not guilty. Not everyone is guilty, because many people don't know. When you come to Islam, for example, as a revert, it's not easy to understand the differences when you're not as knowledgeable in hadith. But this is also kind of basic. It's very well known. Anyway, you might be excused, but for most people, this is something that is very, very dangerous, very, very important, because it's the things that you can be asked about on Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's your relation to Allah, and it can lead you to things like kufr and bid'ah and things that can take you to Jahannam. In our age, in the age of science and progress, it might, seem to be, tempting to make Islam, fit to these frameworks that come, philosophy, science, and, make it look like it can fit these frameworks to please, not only please, but to make people come to Islam, to defend Islam. But in reality, that is not true, because you are doing a mistake by changing and doing these things and implementing and mending Islam in a way you think you are doing something good. You are waking up with a good feeling when you do this, but in reality, you are doing a big mistake, right? Because you are not following the path of the Salaf. You're not actually doing what was obliged upon us to do, which is accept without how, because Imam Malik said this is obligatory, this is what you should do. And Imam Malik is the great scholar. For me personally, I've gone through a big journey to understand this. I'm not making this video because I am a scholar or something. No, I am not even a talibul ilm. I'm nothing, but I came to understanding that Salafi Athari Aqeedah is the most safe, it's the most correct. It is what most Muslims, all Muslims, Afwan, should follow. Ash'ari-like logic and Islamic intellectuals were actually some of the reasons why I accepted Islam in the beginning. But the more I understood Islam, the meaning is submitting. It's submitting, that's what you are, a Muslim, submits. And that means you submit to Rasulullah, you submit to Allah, you accept deen how it came. You are new to Islam, I was new to Islam, I accept, I don't come in with my ideas. And that is why we accept the principles, how they are, the attributes and the names, how they came. And that's what every Muslim should do. You shouldn't think that you can, fit Islam and even, a'udhu billah, go against the scholars or even the clear Arabic language. Wallahu alam. We submit to the truth, to revelation as it was revealed and interpreted by those who have lived on earth and who lived in the time of the Prophet. We don't beat around the bush and go around trying to submit Islam to our desires. If Allah asks you on the day of judgment, why did you believe I sit on the throne? You will answer, because I accepted and submitted to the confirmed revelations and narrations that came to me. Because if you believe this and it's not correct, let's say, A'udhu Billah, let's say, and then Allah say, why did you believe this? Because that's what I understood from the hadith. It is very clear. You will be taken away from the blame. And in that actually means that it is true. Because how could Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the Quran and the hadith and make it apparent all of these things, and have people not understand what's actually the most clear and apparent meaning of it? No, the clear and apparent meaning is what's true, because that's what most people would have understood. And there is no metaphor here, because if there was metaphor, we would have to find some proof. Where's the proof? Where's the proof that it's metaphor? Give us the dalil. You say it's metaphor, give us the dalil. If there is dalil, if we have hadith about they say this was metaphor, no one said this ever. This is the issue we have. Rather, you will stand on Yom Al-Qiyamah and you will defend every of your belief from the hadith. Why I believe Allah has a hand? Because He said He has a hand. How is this hand? I don't ask. Is it like us, our hands? No. This is the position. This is the safe position, and there is no blame upon anyone who has it. While in reality, if you don't accept this, if you say, I didn't believe you were on the throne, I didn't believe you had the hand, I didn't believe you had the face, Allah will say, but I revealed it as such. And you denied what was the apparent meaning, and Allah can say this to you, and wallahu alam, what happens then? So Allah says in the Quran, cursed are those who say about Allah that which they do not know. A'udhu billah, this is a big warning. Allah says this, and it's also about the Jews. Say about Allah that which they do not know. And that is what the Ash'ari do. Why? Because they say about Allah things like He don't have a hand, it's a metaphor, He didn't rise above the throne, when there is no dalil for it. There is a metaphor they have, there is a principle, whole logical framework, but there is no real dalil that this is the understanding that's correct. So, subhanAllah, people say, no time, no space matter, Allah this, Allah that, no location, no body. Be careful, fear Allah, for He has warned us of transgressing the revelation in regards to His names and attributes and who He is, and claiming that we have no proof for, right? And when we claim things in the Salafi or Athari Aqeedah, it's just a claim based on the hadith, because we are from the Ahlul-Hadith. We take all our understandings from the hadith and from the clear meaning that can be taken from them, and no anthropomorphism. We don't say how, but we don't say that these attributes, for example, are like ours, right? This might seem like small matters, but it is not. It's matters concerning Allah the Most High. Names and attributes are among the most serious things in the deen, and learning them is getting close to Allah. Having the right understanding of them is getting close to Allah. Understanding even the dunya itself, subhanAllah. And you find that studying hadith, you will find that Allah affirms numerous realities to Himself in many times. And going into the figurative interpretations on all of them means that now there is so many hadith that you just deny and say are metaphor, and there will be so much of that. And like, how can it be possible that suddenly hundreds of hadith, and you can just choose right now, because when you open the door to metaphorical interpretation, you can say, this is an analogy, this is an analogy, I don't like this, I think the real meaning is not this. A'udhu billah. Rather, we say that everything is revealed, that was revealed is true in its apparent meaning. Allah rises above the throne, descended from the throne, being on the throne, having a hand and face, but nothing is like Allah. Allah's hands and face is not like our hands. Laysa kamithlihi shay. Hence we negate anthropomorphism, but we accept Islam as it is. Now, this is the topic. I want to go into one more thing, which is kind of interesting. And let me see here. That even in the Bible, and this is no proof, this is no foundation we rely upon, but it might be interesting for reverts or people to know that even in the Bible, the attributes and the throne and being on the throne is affirmed. In the 2nd Chronicles 18:18, we see, and Micaiah said, therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on His throne, and all the hosts of heaven standing on His right hand and on His left. So the throne is affirmed. Allah is sitting on the throne. And in Psalms 11:4, we find it says, the Lord is in His holy temple. The Lord is on His heavenly throne. He observes everyone on earth. His eyes examine them. Does Allah have eyes now? Affirm how it is. We don't say it like ours. There's many other verses saying things like face, hand, eyes thrown. This is affirmed already from before. So already you find the Salafi Aqeedah there. Yet with everything, we need to understand that with everything and in this deen, we deal with people with mercy, humbleness, and without hearts of stone. For verily, like when a father, by his good intentions, try to protect the child, he will be a bit harsh with him. So are the Salafis in the deen and those who are around them. You will find that Salafis or people have said that among them there are people who are harsh. And some of it can be true. But why are they harsh? Try to understand why. Because they protect the deen from the bid'ah, and at least they believe they do. And just like the father who protects his child and is harsh with him on matters, and then this child becomes a good child, a disciplined child, we know that it's a beneficial thing, and the child is grateful for it later. Everyone knows that a strict parent will have a good child, and a loose parent will have a bad child. Hence, this is how we call to um, hence the people who are strict and mostly do it are the one who protect the deen from the errors and have the good way. And that doesn't mean that we need to be strict with everyone, but you actually find that among the Sahaba, they were very strict with each other. They found flaws within each other and they would take it very seriously, even becoming physical. um, and on top of all of that, when you see something that's a mistake in the deen, you should talk about it, because failing um, to forbid evil and go against evil and go against bid'ah, and then failing to call to the good and call to the truth, it's an obligation on us to call to the truth and to correct mistakes and to forbid the wrong. And this is another issue that the Jews had, that they failed to do that. They failed to prevent the wrong that happened when they knew it was wrong and they saw it, and correct the people. And so this is what the Salafis do. This is why you think they are harsh, but this is reality of the deen, that the truth, it splits, and the more knowledge you have, the more you will be seeing that the different incorrect and mistakes of the people. And you see among the scholars today that they are among the most important people, the Salafi scholars, to bring people to Tawheed and to the Quran and the Sunnah. And people say, oh, they split the Ummah. They are splitting the Ummah. And they are causing division. But in reality, they are correcting the people, just like the Sahaba did with each other, just like the Prophet did. For even every Prophet came except that he split the people. He split father and son. Even Jesus say, I didn't come but to split the son from the father, or something along those lines. So prophets came and they didn't unify everyone into a garden. No, they came with the truth. The people who didn't accept it fought them, and this is how it works. And the Salafi people, the Salafis, they are the people today who do this among the Ummah, and they don't split, they call to the truth. And those who are upon bid'ah and innovations and who are upon false understandings, they will feel this, because they have attached their hearts to other things, in the book, in the Sunnah. They have attached their hearts. I'm not saying it's shirk, I'm just saying they attached some things that it's hard for them to go out of it, because they, even that it's the safest way, they don't want to do it because of how they have understood things. And even the last things we're going to say here is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said there will be 73 sects and only one will be in Jannah. And so this means that the Ummah will be split. The Ummah will be split and only one will be in Jannah, right? The more knowledge you have, the more you see, you will understand their causes to why this happens. So seek knowledge, read the books of the scholars, and read the books of the Hanabila, read Aqeedah to Wasitiyah, read Ibn Taymiyyah, read Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, read Ibn Uthaymeen, Ibn Baz, read these people and just see for yourself. Shaitan has made it popular to slander scholars today and to slander the people who, Allahu Alam, have the highest stations due to their work they do and the, high effort they've done. And Shaitan has made it popular to slander them, callers to the truth, just like he made it popular and made it a thing to slander the prophets in their times. And this is among the Muslims, among the people who are worshipping Allah, who are submitting to Allah. We have this fitna today. And so we're going to end with the fact that, you all have your own journeys to understand things in Islam. And, it is very important to take Islam very seriously and to accept what was revealed, understandings of the earliest generations as it was, without distortion, without asking how. And this is the right Aqeedah. I hope this video was a good understanding and a summary of like how actually Aqeedah came and why you should now take it seriously to study the deen correctly and come close to Allah with the right understanding. We ask Allah that this video become beneficial, that any mistakes I do that become clarified, and that I distance myself from any mistakes. Everything I say here, double check for yourself. I am not a scholar. Go research yourself. Inshallah, if you like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.